Chapter 121. Boom. Chu Nan threw a punch. The suffix symbol in front of him displayed that the opponent from the United States of Meleta had blocked his left arm. Without even swaying, he stepped on his right foot and counterattacked with his right fist. Good timing. Chu Nan could not help but shout. He was not shocked but happy. He retracted his right fist and slapped his left hand on his waist, meeting his opponent's punch. Slap. Their fists collided and their bodies swayed. They took a few steps back and stared at each other again. Chu Nan looked at this tall and handsome opponent who had the signature blue eyes of the United States of Meleta and felt rather gratified. It was already the 37th round in a row, and he finally encountered a decent opponent. In the previous 36 battles, the opponents Chu Nan had encountered were all Overlord Body Realm martial artists. With his current strength, these opponents were not a threat to him. When Chu Nan faced them, he had always deliberately not mobilized all his physical strength to unleash the greatest power like before. Instead, he used his data ability to face his opponent almost every time. Every time they collided, Chu Nan would use a different method to mobilize his internal breath. Sometimes, he used the second revolution internal breath, sometimes the third revolution, and sometimes he controlled his internal breath to a high-frequency vibration state. Sometimes, he combined the two together and used the second revolution internal breath or even the third revolution to complement the high-frequency vibration. At the same time, Chu Nan continuously adjusted the frequency of his internal breath's high-frequency vibration to complement the different circulations of his internal breath. Through these deliberate experiments, Chu Nan discovered that if he used high-frequency vibration internal breath, the higher the frequency, the greater the power of his internal breath. Coupled with the internal breath that circulated through different cycles, the different moves, and even some of the details of his battle with his opponent, the power emitted by his internal breath was different. The only similarity was that the previous 36 opponents had all failed to endure his experiments more than 10 times. They would be defeated in less than a minute, causing him to be unable to experiment freely. Now that he had finally encountered an opponent whose strength had clearly surpassed his previous one, Chu Nan was naturally happy and even excited. In the first test just now, Chu Nan's first punch used the second revolution internal breath combined with the 0.861862 kHz vibration frequency. From the previous experiments, the power of this internal breath was approximately the full-strength strike of a fourth-stage Overlord Body Realm martial artist. Coupled with the basic strength of the fist, it could be equivalent to a normal attack by a fifth-stage Overlord Body Realm martial artist. However, this attack was easily neutralized by this opponent. Next, when Chu Nan blocked his counterattack, he mobilized his third revolution internal breath in advance. However, he could only barely block the counterattack and did not gain any advantage. From this, it could be deduced that this opponent of the United States of Meleta should at least have the strength of an initial stage internal breath realm martial artist. Such an opponent would undoubtedly allow Chu Nan to experiment with more internal breath than all the previous opponents. After the two of them looked at each other, their opponent took a step forward with his left foot and landed heavily on the ground. Chu Nan immediately felt the entire ground shake. This opponent was clearly a martial artist who walked the path of strength. Chu Nan clenched his fists and the internal breath in his body quickly circulated 3 times. Moreover, he adjusted the frequency to exactly 1 kHz and flowed into his fist to face it. Boom! Powerful forces collided, and an explosion sounded far away. As expected, this opponent was completely different from the previous opponents. The fluctuation of internal breath could be clearly seen on his fist. The previous 36 opponents were all Overlord Body martial artists, and no one could mobilize their internal breath like Chu Nan. Therefore, when faced with Chu Nan's attacks mixed with internal breath, almost all of them could not resist and were easily defeated. However, now that Chu Nan had clashed with this opponent, even with the help of the third revolution internal breath with the 1 kHz vibration frequency, he could only fight evenly with the other party and not gain any advantage. Again, before his opponent could adjust, Chu Nan threw another punch. In this punch, he mobilized his third revolution internal breath again. However, according to the data gathered when he fought with the other party just now, he adjusted the frequency of his internal breath vibration to 1.628689 kHz. Boom! The two of them swayed again. Again. Boom! 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 In the blink of an eye, Chu Nan had already exchanged more than 30 punches with his opponent. Chu Nan had already adjusted the frequency of his internal breath's vibration to the limit that he could control now, 3.718604 kHz. But he still could not completely break through the other party's defense. From this point, this opponent at least had the strength of an initial stage internal breath realm martial artist. It was even possible that he was a second stage internal breath realm martial artist. Through these 30-plus head-on clashes, Chu Nan was certain that if he continued to use his third revolution internal breath, he would definitely be unable to do anything to this opponent. Fourth revolution. Chu Nan took a deep breath. Third revolution internal breath was already his limit before he was injured. Fourth revolution internal breath had already completely broken through this limit. Although he was certain that with the toughness of his current meridians, after his meridians were healed, he should be able to endure the impact of the fourth revolution internal breath that had been increased again, he had never tried it before and was still a little nervous. After thinking for a moment, he suddenly cursed himself softly. How can I be such a coward? Not to mention that this was only in martial soul, even if his meridians were completely broken again, it would not affect his actual body. Even in reality, could he really not dare to try because he was worried that his meridians would be damaged again? After figuring this out, Chu Nan no longer hesitated. When he saw his opponent throwing another punch, Chu Nan activated the internal breath in his body. His speed was much faster than when he was competing with Marok. He completed the third circulation and instantly entered the fourth revolution internal breath. The amplified internal breath surged into his meridians, and it did not make Chu Nan feel any discomfort. His meridians, which had been strengthened again, easily endured the impact of this powerful internal breath and supported it to complete the fourth circulation, achieving the fourth revolution internal breath. Boom! Chu Nan punched his opponent again. However, this time, Chu Nan's feet did not move, but his opponent took more than 10 steps back before barely stabilizing his body. Then, his body swayed and he spat out a mouthful of blood. The power of the fourth revolution internal breath was indeed not something an initial stage internal breath martial artist like him could block. Chu Nan mobilized another strand of internal breath and quickly circulated it through the meridians in his body. After confirming that all his meridians were unharmed, he was overjoyed. This experiment was successful, proving that he could casually mobilize his fourth revolution internal breath in the future. At the same time, this meant that he would have the capital to easily defeat initial stage internal breath realm martial artists and face a second stage internal breath realm martial artist head-on. It was impossible for a second person to be like him among all the Overlord Body martial artists. Chapter 122. Did you see the result? Yu Tingfeng stared at Chu Nan in the distance and asked his subordinate beside him in a low voice. He had already stared at Chu Nan for half an hour but still could not see what was special about him. Although this did not make him feel vexed, if he still could not obtain the result he wanted, it was meaningless to continue this test for Chu Nan. The Noctem Chamber of Commerce branch office in the Earth Federation West Cloud planet had gathered almost the top resources on Chu Nan. What awaited them was more important things to do. It was impossible for them to maintain this situation. Moreover, it was impossible for Chu Nan to stay here forever. According to the verbal agreement between the two sides, he would only come to assist in the investigation today. If not for the fact that he was currently engrossed in martial soul, he would probably have been impatient. I haven't discovered anything abnormal for the time being. The subordinate responsible for monitoring Chu Nan's various physical statistics shook his head. Perhaps it's because the opponents he encountered today are too weak and can't even exhaust the stamina he simulated in the game, let alone injure him. Therefore, we can't observe the special recovery mechanism that appeared after his physical condition changed greatly. Then can you think of a way to arrange a stronger opponent for him to be injured in the game? The subordinate glanced at Yu Tingfeng and did not answer. Yu Tingfeng frowned and understood the meaning in his subordinate's eyes. Arranging for Chu Nan's opponent was the work of the martial soul game system. If he wanted to interfere, it was obvious that he could only rely on the project team in the Chamber of Commerce who was responsible for the operation of the martial soul. However, considering the ball kicked over by the martial soul project team just now, Yu Tingfeng wisely gave up on this idea. Just the reward problem brought about by a temporary authority made those guys extremely unwilling. If they were to disturb the normal operation of the martial soul system because of this matter, they would probably be rejected even if they mentioned Lord Rubes. Actually, it can't be said that there's nothing abnormal. Another data analyst who belonged to this monitoring group beside him spoke hesitantly. According to the various statistics that Chu Nan has simulated in the game recently, I discovered a place that might be worth our attention. Oh, where is it? At this moment, Yu Tingfeng did not care what happened. As long as there was something worth paying attention to on Chu Nan, he was unwilling to give up. No matter what, it was considered an explanation to Lord Rubes. Look, the data analyst pointed at the huge virtual screen in front of him. All of Chu Nan's actions in the game can be quantified to be reflected in specific data. A portion of the data related to him has attracted my attention. It represents the portion of data that simulates the flow of his internal breath. What's special about it? Yu Tingfeng asked. The subordinate operated the virtual screen and a diagram world appeared. I'll draw the data related to his internal breath and make it a real-time detection pattern. It can be seen that his internal breath will be in an abnormally stable state most of the time without any fluctuations. Yes, this means that Chu Nan's internal breath is very stable. Generally, young martial artists like him will always have very unstable internal breath, and they rarely act like him. Another staff member who had been standing beside him interrupted. This staff member was the leader of the security team under the branch office, Toranje. He had the strength of a second-stage void break martial artist and was specially found by Yu Tingfeng this time to help analyze the special aspects of Chu Nan's martial technique. Chu Nan is a runner-up in the martial arts competition below the age of 20. He even nearly became the champion. It's not strange for him to have this performance. Yu Tingfeng shook his head and continued to ask the data analyst, what's really special about him? His true special trait is that every time he starts a battle and his internal breath is activated, he can always erupt with a small peak in a very short period of time. According to the statistics of many times, the small peak he erupts with is divided into 3 different peaks in terms of strength. The highest peak is approximately 37% stronger than the lowest peak. Yu Tingfeng turned to look at Toranje. Toranje pondered for a moment and replied, this should be related to the internal breath cultivation method he cultivates. According to the Federation Information Martial Arts World Channel, Chu Nan cultivates the 9 revolutions technique. The special trait of the 9 revolutions technique is that it can allow his internal breath to circulate multiple times in his meridians and strengthen the strength of his internal breath. He can erupt with 3 different strong points of internal breath, proving that he should have already grasped the technique of the 3rd revolution internal breath. At this point, Toranje could not help but exclaim, this kid is not even 18 years old this year, but he can actually master the 3rd revolution internal breath. His talent is really terrifying. After saying that, he sighed. However, it's a pity that he did not obtain the guidance of a master previously. Otherwise, even if he cultivates the 9 revolutions technique, with his talent, he should be able to become a qualified internal breath martial artist now. Let's not worry about this for now. Yu Tingfeng waved his hand, just observing this shouldn't be anything special. There must be something else that attracted your attention. Yes. The data analyst nodded. He operated his hand and changed to another diagram on the virtual screen. This is a change diagram that I specially calculated for his peak internal breath waves. It can be seen that the data of the small peak he erupted with is almost identical, and the maximum error is less than 1%. That's impossible. Toranje immediately shook his head. The greatest trait of the 9 revolutions technique is indeed that it can allow one's internal breath to circulate more times and increase the strength. However, every cycle that is repeated will make it harder for a martial artist to control their internal breath. It's impossible for him to maintain such a small difference. This is the truth. The data analyst pointed at the data diagram on the virtual screen expressionlessly. Toranje's expression froze. That's right, this was real data placed in front of him. It could not be faked. However, if this was true, did it not mean that Chu Nan's control of his internal breath had reached an extremely shocking level? Not to mention Overlord Body martial artists, it was impossible for most internal breath martial artists to achieve such precise control. Even a second-stage void break martial artist like him. No, most probably not even void break martial artists could do it. Seeing the change in Toranje's expression, Yu Tingfeng felt a trace of excitement. At the very least, from the looks of it, Chu Nan was indeed worth paying attention to. It was enough to prove Lord Rubza's judgment. Is there anything else? Yu Tingfeng looked at the data analyst again with anticipation. Yes. The data analyst nodded. His fingers moved a few times, and the scene on the virtual screen in front of him changed again. This is another set of data related to his internal breath. Yu Tingfeng and Toranje looked at each other in confusion. What's this? This time, the data analyst indeed turned to Toranje and said, Captain Toranje, according to the latest research of the Chamber of Commerce and the statistics from the Martial Soul Project team, when a martial artist uses their internal breath, other than the most noteworthy and intuitive strength of their internal breath, there is also an equally important data. That is the vibration frequency that their internal breath brings when it circulates in their meridians. Oh, this is the first time I've heard of this thing. What's the use? Toranje asked in surprise. For the time being, the Chamber of Commerce has yet to develop anything more. However, it can be confirmed that the frequency of internal breath vibration is different for different martial artists, because the internal breath cultivation methods cultivated by different martial artists are different. Even martial artists who cultivate the same internal breath cultivation method will have their own differences because of their physical characteristics. However, in terms of themselves, the frequency is basically a fixed value. The more stable the frequency of vibration, the more stable the circulation of this martial artist's internal breath is. Toranje touched his chin. I'm not too sure what profound term you're talking about, but the stronger a martial artist, the more stable their internal breath is. However, we can see that the frequency of Chu Nan's internal breath vibration is extremely unstable. It can even be said that there has been an extremely shocking change in this period. Toranje was stunned. How is that possible? If it was according to what you said, Chu Nan would have long lost control of his internal breath and gone berserk. The fact is that he's still fine. The data analyst pointed at Chu Nan, who was still surrounded by a pile of equipment in the distance. Moreover, according to the data, under normal circumstances, his internal breath is abnormally stable and the frequency of vibration is maintained at a very low level. However, once he enters the battle, the highest is even more than 3000 Hz. Captain Toranje, do you know what this means? Toranje shook his head in confusion. In most cases, the 3000 Hz frequency is an unbearable burden to the human body. The highest frequency of internal breath vibration we observed from other martial artists is less than 20 Hz, but Chu Nan's internal breath vibration frequency can reach such a terrifying degree. Captain Toranje, is the 9 revolutions technique so special? This shouldn't be the case, right? Toranje was not certain, unless you can capture some martial artists who also cultivate the 9 revolutions technique to experiment. I'll submit this suggestion. The data analyst nodded before turning to look at Yu Tingfeng, who was focused on stopping. Director, according to these data, Chu Nan's internal breath circulation method is very special compared to other martial artists. It's worth observing and studying. Yu Tingfeng heaved a sigh of relief. With the data analyst's words, he finally had an explanation for the mission given by Lord Rubes. Chapter 123. Chu Nan exited Martial Soul with a black face. The staff of the Not-Tem Chamber of Commerce came up and saw the expression on his face. He could not help but ask curiously, "What? Is there a problem?" Chu Nan shook his head to indicate that he was fine. In the last battle just now, he had encountered a powerful opponent who was not weaker than Marok. After confirming that the 4th revolution internal breath could not do anything to this opponent no matter how high the frequency of the internal breath shook, Chu Nan did not hesitate to try it. He had originally thought that since he could finally use the 5th revolution internal breath in the battle with Marok, the strength and toughness of his meridians had greatly increased. His control of his internal breath had also become much more exquisite. Even if it was still difficult to use the 5th revolution internal breath, and it might even cause excessive impact to his meridians and cause damage, it would not be a problem. However, he did not expect that as soon as his internal breath began to circulate 5 times, he would be kicked out of the combat room by the system and announced that he had lost this battle. Flipping open the reason for his failure, he discovered that it was because he had been judged by the system to have exceeded the burden of his body and was in a state of being unable to fight that he had been kicked out by the system. In summary, it was actually similar to those opponents who had lost their combat strength after being kicked in the vital points by him and transformed into white light to disappear. However, those opponents had all lost their combat strength because of him. Now, he had lost his combat strength because of his own action, and it was completely different from before. Is this considered reaping what I sowed? When he recalled the situation earlier, Chu Nan could not help but smile bitterly. In fact, these two scenarios are naturally different. Although the 5th revolution internal breath still caused serious damage to his meridians, in reality, with the toughness of Chu Nan's current meridians, it would not be like in the competition with Marok. Back then, it could only support him to complete the 5th revolution internal breath circulation for a cycle. After punching, he would be completely finished and could not move for a period of time. However, to the monitoring system of Martial Soul, there was a human test upper limit. Once he exceeded this limit, he would be directly judged by the system to be unable to continue fighting. From the looks of it, even with the technology of the Not-Tem Chamber of Commerce, they could not clearly distinguish these two different situations. Of course, it was also possible that this was deliberately set up by Martial Soul to prevent some martial artists from relying on the fact that Martial Soul was a virtual reality game to mess around and ultimately cause a huge problem in reality. Chu Nan originally wanted to take this opportunity to properly test his 5th revolution internal breath, but he could only give up now. He lowered his head and opened his personal terminal to look at the time. He discovered that it was already 5 p.m. in the local time. Chu Nan raised his head and said to the staff beside him, "I should go." "Where is Director Yu Tingfeng?" The staff immediately bade farewell and left. Soon, Yu Tingfeng appeared in front of Chu Nan with a smile. "Student Chu Nan, thank you very much for coming to assist in the investigation of our Chamber of Commerce. I am sorry to have troubled you for the entire afternoon." Chu Nan shrugged. "I actually did not do anything. I was only lying there and playing games." Yu Tingfeng laughed and took 2 things from a subordinate beside him and handed them to Chu Nan. "In order to thank you for your help to our Chamber of Commerce today, this is a small token I specially prepared. Please accept it." Chu Nan was a little strange. Previously, when Yu Tingfeng discussed with him, the reward was clearly 20,000 Federation coins. Why had it been changed to some physical items now? Moreover, this ancient material that was like a name card did not seem to be useful. This is the 1-star VIP card of our Chamber of Commerce. Whoever holds this VIP card will enjoy the treatment and corresponding benefits of being a 1-star VIP and spending in any industry under our Not-Tem Chamber of Commerce in the future. Yu Tingfeng first opened the card in his left hand in front of Chu Nan. I think you will be satisfied with this gift. Chu Nan nodded and received it without holding back. This was indeed a good thing. The Not-Tem Chamber of Commerce not only controlled the entire Sagittarius arm, but their businesses were also everywhere. In the Earth Federation, other than the various Earth Federation enterprises that cooperated with the Not-Tem Chamber of Commerce, there were also countless businesses under them. Just on West Cloud Planet, there were many. From small items like toothpaste and shower gel to large vehicles like cosmic battleships, there was no industry that the Not-Tem Chamber of Commerce did not interfere in. If he had this VIP card, it meant that Chu Nan could enjoy many conveniences and benefits in the future and have a large sum of money left. However, what puzzled Chu Nan was that even if it was a VIP card, he only needed to verify his identity. Why did he have to give such an ancient card? This is my personal interest. Yu Tingfeng smiled and explained before handing the thing in his other hand over. This was a very old-looking book. This is some information that I have specially sent people to collect in the past few months. A portion of it can be directly sent to your personal terminal, but this original copy of the ancient book can only be handed to you personally. Chu Nan carefully took the book that looked like it could be torn at any time and did not dare to open it casually. What is this? These information are all the insights of some martial artists when they broke through the cosmic heaven's gate. I think it might be useful to you. As for this book, it is left behind by a martial artist who said that he only became an internal breath realm martial artist after he became an adult but successfully broke through to the initial stage void break realm at the age of 60. Because his records are very chaotic, I think there will be some flaws if you replicate it. The original notes he wrote can allow you to better understand the things he left behind. Hearing Yu Tingfeng's explanation, Chu Nan widened his eyes in surprise. Just 20,000 Federation coins were enough for him to make this trip. Yu Tingfeng had actually prepared such a suitable gift for him now. It simply surprised him. Chu Nan reached out to take it, but he suddenly stopped and looked at Yu Tingfeng in confusion. Director Yu Tingfeng, you must have other requests, right? Yu Tingfeng laughed, as expected. I cannot hide it from little brother Chu. That is right, your ability to assist in the investigation today has indeed helped us resolve many problems. However, other than that, I am afraid there are also some problems that I need your help with. If possible, I hope you can come once in a while. What do you think? Chu Nan frowned. What other problem is there? In the end, what problem do you need my help to resolve? If there is only a mistake in the relevant data on me, it should not cause you to make such a big fuss, right? Little brother Chu is indeed smart. That is right, it is indeed not only these problems. In fact, in today's assisting investigation, I unintentionally discovered that you might be very helpful to a study of our Chamber of Commerce. Therefore, I hope you can participate in it for a long time. Chu Nan was even more puzzled. Me? Participate in the research? Are you serious? I sure am. Yu Tingfeng shook his head with a serious expression. No matter how he looked at it, it did not seem like a joke. Chu Nan glanced at him and looked at the VIP card and the precious information in his hand before hesitating for a moment. However, I will be leaving West Cloud Planet soon. Yu Tingfeng was stunned. When did this happen? Chu Nan roughly explained his withdrawal from West Cloud Academy. After Yu Tingfeng heard this, he frowned and thought for a moment before gesturing for Chu Nan to wait. Then, he went to the side and seemed to have a conversation with someone before turning around. Little brother Chu, I sincerely invite you to help our Chamber of Commerce complete this research. Even if you are not on West Cloud Planet, you can still find any station of our Chamber of Commerce in the future and participate at any time. Participating in this research has no restriction on your time and freedom in life. You only need to spend an afternoon like today when you are free. As for the reward, it is temporarily set to 50,000 Federation coins per session. What do you think? 50,000 Federation coins going once? Chu Nan was shocked. The Not-Tem Chamber of Commerce was indeed rich and imposing. A casual sentence determined the payment of 50,000 Federation coins. Then are there any other requirements? Chu Nan asked again. Not at the moment. If there is one in the future, we will clearly mention it to you. Both sides can discuss it again. At this point, Yu Tingfeng smiled slightly. Please believe in the credibility of our Not-Tem Chamber of Commerce. Chu Nan nodded. No matter what other people or countries thought of the Not-Tem Chamber of Commerce, They were surprisingly consistent in terms of commercial credit, excellent, without a doubt. Alright, I will make another request. If you agree, I will seriously consider participating in this research. Seeing that Chu Nan finally relented, Yu Tingfeng revealed an even more brilliant smile. Please speak. Chapter 124. Dressed in the dark red light of the setting sun, Chu Nan pushed open the dormitory door in a happy mood and was immediately shocked by the situation in the dormitory. The small dormitory was in chaos. All kinds of random things were thrown to the ground. Apart from a small area at the door that was relatively quiet, there was almost no place to stand. Dongfang was lying on the ground at this moment. His head reached under his bed, and he moved his fat body inwards with difficulty, as if he was looking for something. Hey, Dongfang, what is going on? Could it be that there is a thief in the dormitory? Chu Nan asked in disbelief. Thinking about it, it was impossible. Although the West Cloud Academy was not ranked in the entire Earth Federation, it was second to none on West Cloud Planet. The facilities in the academy were perfect and strict. Coupled with a security system bought from the Series Security Company at a high price, how could a student's dormitory be visited by thieves? Chu Nan, you. Dongfang replied and wanted to get up, but he knocked his head against the bottom of the bed and immediately stopped talking. Fortunately, he was a third-stage Overlord Body martial artist after all. Although he was not outstanding, he would not be in trouble if his head hit the bottom of the bed. After waiting for a moment, he crawled out from under the bed with difficulty. He held a disc in his hand and looked excited. I thought that this thing had long been lost. I did not expect it to be under the bed. Chu Nan speechlessly looked at Dongfang, who had dirty hair, and shook his head. I say, what are you doing? Can you not see? I am packing my luggage. Dongfang waved the disc in his hand. If not for this, I am afraid I would not have been able to find this precious disc that I obtained from the cultural relic market. It is something from more than 800 years ago. What is there to treasure? Chu Nan was puzzled and was stunned. Also, pack your luggage? Why do you need to pack your luggage? Pack my luggage and leave. What else can I do? Dongfang had an expression that said, you are asking nonsense. Leave? You? Where are you going? Chu Nan was even more stunned. Dongfang chuckled and stood up. He arrived beside Chu Nan and grabbed his shoulder. Chu Nan, do you still remember what I told you before? You told me at least 100,000 things. How can I remember? Chu Nan rolled his eyes. I have said it before. The two of us are good brothers, so we must band together. Therefore, since you have taken a break from the academy, I naturally have to accompany you, right? Chu Nan widened his eyes. Do not tell me you are. Yes, that is right. I have already submitted my withdrawal application to the academy in the afternoon and have been approved. Damn! Chu Nan could not help but shout. Are you crazy? Why did you suddenly drop out? Dongfang shrugged with a nonchalant expression. I do not want to stay here anymore. What is so strange about dropping out? Chu Nan frowned and looked at him. He discovered that he did not seem to be joking and his expression became serious. To be honest. All right. Dongfang sighed and sat down. He pointed at Chu Nan's bed and gestured for him to sit down. The truth is, wait, what I said was the truth. I do not want to waste time in West Cloud Academy, so I chose to drop out. Specifically. Chu Nan frowned and asked. To be specific, it is. You should know that I was unhappy at home, so I escaped from home and came to West Cloud Academy to study, right? Chu Nan nodded. Although Dongfang had never introduced his family's situation to Chu Nan in detail, the two of them had been together for nearly 2 years, so he still revealed a lot. According to the situation revealed by Dongfang, he should be from a large family. He had always enjoyed a superior life that ordinary civilians like Chu Nan could not imagine since he was young. However, Dongfang was unwilling to comply with the arrangements his family made for him. He escaped from his family and deliberately joined the inconspicuous West Cloud Academy. However, the problem was, why did he want to withdraw from West Cloud Academy now? It is very simple. I will be 18 years old in the second half of the year. According to the agreement with my family, I can be a little willful before I am 18 years old, but after I am 18 years old, I cannot do whatever I want. I have to listen to some of my family's arrangements, Dongfang explained. Chu Nan had a blank expression as if he was listening to an unknown language. After a while, he shook his head and thought to himself that the internal relationship of a large family was really incomprehensible. Or could it be that it was completely Dongfang's personal special situation and could not be considered the practice of those large families? Then why do you have to choose to withdraw from the academy on the same day as me? Also, why did the academy agree to your withdrawal application so easily? They clearly do not agree to my withdrawal. Even grading a leave application is so awkward. Nonsense, I am not a symbol of the academy like you. Dongfang rolled his eyes at Chu Nan. Alright, to be honest, I used my family to pressure the academy a little. Otherwise, they would not be so happy. As for choosing the same day as you, that is naturally what I said earlier. We are good brothers, so we should band together. Chu Nan rolled his eyes. In order to drop out of school, this guy would actually use his family to pressure the academy's leaders. Moreover, if his family really had the ability to pressure West Cloud Academy, it was enough to prove that his family was stronger than Chu Nan had imagined. However, this was not Chu Nan's fault. He only cared about Dongfang himself. Hearing Dongfang repeat good brothers band together twice, he was more or less touched. Dongfang was the only good friend he had made in West Cloud Academy. The two had gotten along very well in these nearly 2 years. Now that he had chosen to take a leave of absence, Dongfang had directly chosen to drop out of school and return home in the future. It was still alright for him, but the meaning behind Dongfang's words was very obvious, that he wanted to accept the arrangements of his family in the future. In the future, it would probably be very difficult for the two sides to casually meet. This friendship that he had finally made would definitely fade away in the future. When he thought of this, Chu Nan felt a trace of melancholy. Tisk, you are thinking too much. What era is this now? The era of the Great Milky Way. It is not a problem even if we are 180 light years away. We will be there in a spaceship in a few days. What is wrong with meeting? Moreover, if there is really no other way, there is still the Milky Way network. We can meet through the internet at any time. Why are you so sentimental like a girl? Tisk, you are the one who is like a girl. Chu Nan cursed and rubbed his face to shake off the chaotic emotions in his mind. In that case, the procedures for your withdrawal have been settled, so you are packing up and planning to leave. That is right. When do you plan to leave? When are you leaving? Dongfang asked. I just booked the spacecraft tickets for the day after tomorrow. Alright, I will make a trip with you the day after tomorrow. Dongfang snapped his fingers and opened his personal terminal. After a series of operations, he gestured at Chu Nan to win. Alright, done. I am on the same ship as you. Looking at Dongfang's proud expression, Chu Nan could not help but shake his head and curse softly. Damn rich people. Chapter 125. 2 days later, at the center of West Cloud Planet, a medium-sized civilian spacecraft slowly left the ground and accelerated. Soon, it broke through the atmosphere and entered the starry sky. According to the spacecraft number X881C, after it left West Cloud Planet, it would take 27 hours of conventional space travel and perform a superspatial jump through 3 stargates to reach the end of this journey, the Vika Goddess star system located 18.7 degrees outside the spiral arm at the bottom of West Cloud Planet 117 light-years away. West Cloud Planet did not have a travel route that went straight to Chu Nan's home planet, the Purple Cloud Planet. Chu Nan could only go to the Vika Goddess star system and transfer to another line. When he arrived at the Aqua star system 65 light-years away from the Purple Cloud Planet, he could return to the Purple Cloud Planet by transferring to a short-range space flight line. No wonder you haven't returned home in the past 2 years. This trip back is too troublesome. If it was me, I wouldn't have returned. Dongfang glanced at the Chu Nan's home route displayed on his personal terminal and could not help but shake his head and sigh. You speak as if you've returned home in the past 2 years. Chu Nan rolled his eyes. Ha, I don't want to return. It's still different from you not being able to return, Dongfang said proudly. If I really want to go home, I only need to make a transfer. It's not as troublesome as you. After saying that, before Chu Nan could answer, he sighed with emotion. Sigh, in the end, there are still too few stargates developed by the Federation, causing the space flight lines to be pitifully few. If only, not to mention the Declan Empire, it would be better to have stargates connecting every 2 galaxies like the United States of Meleta. In your dreams. Chu Nan rolled his eyes at him. It has been more than 10,000 years since the United States of Meleta entered the era of the Great Milky Way. It's the oldest country outside the Orion Arm. Our Earth Federation has only been around 700 years, so how can we compare to them? That's not necessarily true. If the Federation can deepen their cooperation with the Noctem Chamber of Commerce and obtain their full support, I'm certain that in less than 100 years, the Stargate in the Federation will be everywhere. Chu Nan's heart stirred. Speaking of cooperating with the Noctem Chamber of Commerce, he thought of the research help proposed by Yu Tingfeng. Just this morning, after knowing that Chu Nan was going to leave West Cloud Planet on the space flight line in the afternoon, Yu Tingfeng even personally came to meet him. While passing him the things he needed, he reiterated the suggestion he had given Chu Nan previously. According to him, as long as Chu Nan was willing, he only needed to make a trip to the Noctem Chamber of Commerce in his free time to help them complete some research work, and he could obtain at least 50,000 Federation coins every time. This job was not forcing Chu Nan to participate. Participation was up to him, and Yu Tingfeng even guaranteed that it would not cause any problems for him. It simply made Chu Nan unable to find any reason to reject. Moreover, he had no right to reject it. Chu Nan's goal was to enter Star Cloud Academy. However, other than the extremely difficult entrance exam, there was another even more important problem: he had to spend money. Firstly, as the #1 academy in the Federation, according to the information Dongfang had helped Chu Nan find, the minimum tuition fee every year was 100,000 Federation coins, which far exceeded West Cloud Academy. In addition, Star Cloud Academy was located in the capital star system of the Earth Federation, the solar system. The consumption level of the capital was extremely high. According to Dongfang's estimation, no matter how frugal Chu Nan was, his living expenses could not be lower than 30,000 Federation coins. If he added up the other additional costs, if Chu Nan wanted to study in Star Cloud Academy, he would need to spend at least 150,000 Federation coins every year. With Chu Nan's parents' income, they had already done their best to maintain his studies in West Cloud Academy. It was clearly unrealistic to make them pay more than twice the price after entering Star Cloud Academy. Chu Nan's original plan was to rely on the 100,000 Federation coins reward for the first year of tuition after obtaining the 100,000 Federation coins reward for those below the age of 20 in the martial arts competition. Then, he would learn and find a job opportunity to maintain it as much as possible. As for the future, he could only take it one step at a time. He could not think too far ahead. After all, he did not even know if he could enter Star Cloud Academy. However, now that Yu Tingfeng had proposed such a task of assisting in research, it could be said to have solved Chu Nan's pressing problem. Therefore, not only did he not have the qualifications to reject, he even had to thank Yu Tingfeng for giving him such an opportunity. He did not know what research work the Noctem Chamber of Commerce had that required a mere Overlord Body Realm martial artist like him to participate in, but because of this, he did not have to worry about what the Noctem Chamber of Commerce would do to a mere Overlord Body Realm martial artist like him. There was no reason to worry too much. After chatting with Chu Nan for a while, Dongfang returned to his seat and opened his personal terminal to log into the Milky Way network. Seeing him twisting around in his seat in displeasure, Chu Nan could not help but smile. In order to complete this trip with him, Dongfang chose to go to the same space flight line as Chu Nan. He did not choose the other one that was faster. Moreover, he bought an economic cabin like Chu Nan and did not go to the more comfortable business class. This 27-hour journey would undoubtedly be a considerable torture for him. Chu Nan retracted his gaze and turned to look out the window. He also opened his personal terminal and chose to connect. Soon, the screen lit up, revealing the face of a middle-aged man with a surprised smile. "Ha, little Nan," looking at the background, "you've already boarded the ship, right?" Chu Nan smiled. "Yes, I've already boarded the spaceship. I've already flown out of West Cloud Planet and can reach the Vika Goddess star system tomorrow." "Dad, where's Mom?" This middle-aged man who looked and wore very simple clothes was Chu Nan's father, Chu Zongping. "Your mother is killing a sheep now," Chu Zongping replied with a smile. "Do you want me to call her over? Killing a sheep? What for?" Chu Nan asked in surprise. "Nonsense, of course I'm waiting for you to come back to eat. Don't you like to eat mutton the most? It's not easy for you to come back, and your mother is extremely happy. If not for me stopping her, do you believe that she would kill all the sheep in the family?" Chu Zongping laughed loudly. Chu Nan could not help but smile as a warm feeling arose in his heart. After the news of him falling into a coma because of his serious injuries after the battle spread through the media, his parents did not hesitate to rush over from the distant purple cloud planet. After taking care of him for half a month, because he was really worried about his family's matters and Chu Nan's situation was continuously improving, he received special attention from the West Cloud Planet's government and was taken care of very well. Only then did they return under Dongfang's advice. Later on, after he finally woke up, his father, Chu Zongping, rushed over from the purple cloud planet again. He accompanied Chu Nan for 3 days and saw that everything was normal before he was persuaded by Chu Nan. Due to Chu Nan's serious injuries, his parents became deeply suspicious and worried about his continued studies in West Cloud Academy. Therefore, when Chu Nan expressed his intention to withdraw from the academy, the two of them chose to support him without any doubts. According to Chu Zongping, even if Chu Nan did not do anything, as long as he was fine, the couple would be satisfied. I'll make 2 rounds after reaching the Vika Goddess star system. I'll be home in about 3 days. I understand. I'll be careful." After chatting with his father and his mother who had rushed over, Chu Nan hung up the communication and raised his head to look at the brilliant sea of stars outside the window. He took a deep breath. It was understandable that his parents did not want him to continue practicing martial arts. After all, the battle with Marok had injured him greatly and he had almost been given a death notice by the doctor. As parents, they naturally did not want their son to face such a dangerous situation again. However, if that was the case, how should Chu Nan tell them that he wanted to enter Star Cloud Academy? Chapter 126. The X-881C civilian spaceship jumped out of the Stargate and flew at a sublight speed towards the Vika Goddess space station located in the 7th outer ring of the Vika Goddess star system orbit away from the Stargate. The spatial vibration brought about by crossing the Stargate woke most of the passengers who were originally sleeping soundly. Then, the crisp and pleasant voice transmission and the seat vibration reminder function woke up the other passengers who had not woken up. Seeing that they were about to reach the end of the journey, the passengers stretched and began to pack their belongings. Immediately, the huge spacecraft became noisy again. Chu Nan closed the virtual screen of his personal terminal and turned to look at Dongfang. When he discovered that he was still sleeping soundly, he could not help but laugh. At the beginning of the journey, this guy was still in high spirits. As he wandered around the Milky Way network, he discussed the various arrangements after returning home with him. He looked extremely energetic. In the end, after only a few hours, he fell asleep. In the middle of the meal, other than being woken up by Chu Nan to eat 2 meals, he was actually sleeping the rest of the time. It surprised Chu Nan why he was so sleepy. Of course, if this guy was not so good at eating and sleeping, he would not have looked like a fat pig. When he recalled that he slept earlier than him every day in the academy and woke up later than him most of the time, Chu Nan was relieved. "Heh, Dongfang, get up. We are almost there." Chu Nan slapped Dongfang's arm with all his might, and his palm bluntly carried a trace of high-frequency vibration internal breath. This immediately woke Dongfang up from his sleep. His body shook and he immediately stood up. In just an instant, the blank expression on his face had completely disappeared and returned to normal. He gritted his teeth and rubbed his arm. "Damn, Chu Nan, there is no need to be so ruthless when you call me, right? If I am not ruthless, I am worried that I will not be able to wake you up." Chu Nan pointed at the surroundings. "We will be there in less than half an hour. Pack up and prepare to disembark." "Oh, so fast?" Dongfang looked around in surprise. He even looked at the starry sky through the window and confirmed that he had indeed arrived at the Vika Goddess star system. Then, he stretched his back. "There is still half an hour. It is very early. There is no hurry." After saying that, he curiously turned around and looked at Chu Nan before looking at the personal terminal on his left wrist. "Speaking of which, could it be that you have been reading those documents and have not slept at all? How is that possible?" Chu Nan shook his head. "I also slept for a while earlier, but I could not sleep well. I might as well continue to study this information." "How is it? Did you figure out any results?" Dongfang asked again. "How can it be that easy?" Chu Nan sighed. "If there is such a simple result, breaking through the cosmic heaven gate won't be a problem." "That is true." Dongfang shrugged. "However, with this information, at least you can understand what is going on in advance. It is a little useful." "Of course." Chu Nan lowered his head and operated his personal terminal. The virtual screen lit up again and revealed the information he was reading. This and other information he had seen on his journey were all given to him by Yu Tingfeng previously. It was related to the comprehension and relevant information left behind by some other martial artists when they broke through the cosmic heaven gate. Strictly speaking, Chu Nan was still far from breaking through the cosmic heaven gate and did not need these. However, it was quite helpful for him to know in advance what was going on. Before Mu Yatong and Norman determined that it was almost impossible for Chu Nan to break through the cosmic heaven gate in the future, because his strength was too low, he did not care about these things. After all, they were too far away from him. After the 2 star-grade martial artists made this judgment, Chu Nan began to pay attention to this. What kind of hurdle was the cosmic heaven gate? According to the information that Chu Nan and Dongfang had helped him inquire, it was not only extremely difficult for Chu Nan to break through the cosmic heaven gate in the future. In fact, to all martial artists, breaking through the cosmic heaven gate was a problem. Otherwise, it would not have been called the heaven gate. Of course, heaven gate had another meaning. If a martial artist could break through the cosmic heaven gate, it meant that he had successfully broken through the limit of the human body and become a void break martial artist. From then on, he could fly freely in the sky. The so-called heaven gate was the gate to whether one could fly into the sky with their body alone. Before breaking through the cosmic heaven gate, martial artists were only slightly stronger than ordinary people. They could not be considered especially outstanding. However, once he broke through the cosmic heaven gate, a martial artist would completely advance to another level and be completely different from ordinary people. In fact, in the eyes of many people, starting from the void break martial artists could already be truly defined as superhumans. Becoming a heaven control realm martial artist and even being able to enter the universe with his physical body was even more superhuman than Superman. As for star-grade martial artists, they were even more creatures of another level. In those backward and foolish civilizations, such a martial artist could even be called a god. Because of this meaning, in the eyes of most martial artists, there was not much difference between an Overlord Body Realm martial artist and an Internal Breath Realm martial artist, because without breaking through the cosmic heaven gate, everyone was only mortals. According to the general statistics, at least 60% or even more of the martial artists could not break through the cosmic heaven gate. Therefore, from this point, it was not strange for Chu Nan to be unable to break through in the future. If not for his shocking martial arts talent in the West Cloud Planet martial arts competition, a martial artist like him would not have attracted anyone's special attention. This was because similar martial artists were everywhere in any country. What was so special about them? If Chu Nan wanted to break through the cosmic heaven gate in the future, not only would he challenge the judgment of 2-star grade martial artists, it could even be said to be challenging the traditional common sense of martial artists. The difficulty could be imagined. Of course, Chu Nan could not find the exact answer to how to break through the cosmic heaven gate from the information Yu Tingfeng had found. Although Yu Tingfeng had already meticulously gathered this information, what was recorded in the information was only some personal feelings in post-production of those martial artists who had broken through the cosmic heaven gate. The situation written by everyone was different, and it was almost impossible to find a common pattern. After Chu Nan read this information, he summarized a few conclusions. First, the so-called cosmic heaven gate was actually like what Ringal had said. It was a barrier between a martial artist and the universe. Breaking through the cosmic heaven gate was equivalent to breaking through this barrier and fusing a martial artist body into the universe, allowing them to not be limited by their body. Second, this did not mean that the body was not important. On the contrary, the body of a martial artist was the foundation of everything. The stronger the body, the stronger the internal breath, the easier it was to break through the cosmic heaven gate. Third, when every martial artist talked about breaking through the cosmic heaven gate, they would focus on the exquisite fusion of their internal breath and body. However, regarding this important point, every martial artist understanding was completely different. Some were even completely contradictory. While this puzzled Chu Nan, he also understood a principle. Breaking through the cosmic heaven gate was related to the situation of every martial artist. It was impossible to completely copy someone else's method. At this moment, the notebook left behind by the martial artist who was said to have only become an internal breath realm martial artist after growing up and had only broken through the cosmic heaven gate at the age of 60 was very important to Chu Nan. However, because it was inconvenient to travel, Chu Nan had always kept that precious notebook in his carry-on bag and had not taken it out, so he had not seen it. Right, Dongfang, can you help me one last time? Chu Nan suddenly asked. Chapter 127. Dongfang frowned with a dissatisfied expression. Kid, what are you saying? What do you mean by helping you one last time? You mean, after helping you, we won't be friends anymore? Chu Nan opened his mouth and was speechless. Let me remind you again. It is the era of the Milky Way now. Even if it is hundreds of light years away, it is nothing. We can arrive using a spacecraft in a minute. How can it be just a minute? Chu Nan could not help but refute. Cut the crap. Dongfang waved his hand and interrupted Chu Nan. Even if the spaceship is not that convenient, there is still the Milky Way network. It is very easy to contact them. Unless you want to stop being friends with me in the future and decide not to contact me anymore, what do you mean by this is the last time? Are you looking down on me? Chu Nan did not expect that his casual words would provoke Dongfang to complain. He could only raise his hands in surrender. Alright, I was wrong. Stop talking nonsense. I want you to help me now. Will you help me? Help. Of course I can help. Dongfang patted his chest forcefully. I, Dongfang, have always granted my friends' requests. People call me the most trustworthy brother. Tell me, what do you want me to help? What nonsense. Chu Nan helplessly rolled his eyes. I asked you to help. Dongfang, I think your network should be wider than mine and you should have more contact outside. Help me pay attention to the information regarding the cosmic heavens gate in the future. What? Is this information not enough? The more the better. Understood. Dongfang snapped his fingers, indicating that he knew. Looking at Chu Nan lowering his head to read the information again, a trace of hesitation suddenly flashed through Dongfang's eyes before he calmed down. Chu Nan, have you thought about what to do in the future? Chu Nan raised his head in shock. I am going to register for Star Cloud Academy and strive to break through the cosmic heavens gate. What else can I do? What if you are unable to break through the cosmic heavens gate like Mu Yatong and the others said? What do you plan to do? Dongfang asked. Chu Nan's expression changed slightly. He understood Dong Fang's meaning. Are you planning to ask about my life arrangements? That is about the same thing, Dong Fang said. Look, if you cannot break through the cosmic heaven's gate, you will at most be an internal breath realm martial artist. It is nothing at all. It is almost impossible to rely on this life. As for the others, when Uncle Chu and the others came last time, they said that they hoped that you could stay on the purple cloud planet in the future to inherit the farm. However, you are unwilling to be a farmer for your entire life, right? Chu Nan pondered for a moment and smiled bitterly. Although I am not very willing, if it is as you say and I am still unable to break through the cosmic heaven's gate, I am afraid I can only resign myself to fate and obediently be a farmer on the purple cloud planet. I have no other choice. No, you do. Dong Fang looked at Chu Nan with a serious expression. If you, I am saying if you cannot break through the cosmic heaven's gate in the future and decide to give up on the path of martial arts, it is best you tell me. I might be able to give you a suitable arrangement. Chu Nan narrowed his eyes slightly and stared at Dong Fang in silence. After a while, Dong Fang was defeated. He sighed and waved his hand. All right. I knew that with your temper, you would not accept it. Pretend I did not say anything. No, you have misunderstood. Chu Nan shook his head. Dong Fang, I do not treat this as your pity. I just cannot give you a definite answer. I only have one goal in mind now, and that is to break through the cosmic heaven's gate and become a truly powerful martial artist. Do you understand? I understand. Therefore, just treat what I said as nonsense. There are no ifs. You can definitely break through the cosmic heaven's gate. Dong Fang nodded very seriously. Of course, if you encounter any difficulties in the future, do not forget that you have me as your friend. Chu Nan looked at Dong Fang for a while and revealed an extremely brilliant smile. Of course. Who asked you to be my friend? An hour later, in the extremely huge Vika Goddess Star System space station, Chu Nan raised his hand and waved it at Dong Fang, who had already stepped into the transfer passageway. Looking at Dong Fang's figure gradually disappearing into the passageway and being completely obstructed by the crowd, Chu Nan did not have much worry about parting. It was not because his relationship with Dong Fang was bad, but because Dong Fang was right. It was the era of the Great Milky Way now. It was not an insurmountable chasm hundreds of light years away. If they wanted to meet, there would always be a chance. It only depended on whether they were willing or not. With the support of the Milky Way network, the connection that was hundreds of light years away was extremely relaxed. How could there be any unfamiliarity? After watching Dong Fang leave, Chu Nan opened his personal terminal and checked. After confirming that the next flight to the Aqua star system would leave in 3 hours, he walked towards another waiting hall. As he walked, Chu Nan opened his personal terminal and seized the opportunity to continue studying the precious information Yu Tingfeng had given him. Stop him! He had only taken a few steps when a sharp cry suddenly sounded in the distance. Chu Nan raised his head in surprise and looked in the direction of the voice. He saw a slightly chubby woman in a red dress shouting in the distance. Turning around, he saw a short figure covered in black clothes quickly fleeing from the crowd. He knocked over a few tourists along the way, causing a commotion. No way! Chu Nan looked at the situation in surprise and could not believe his eyes. Under normal circumstances, this kind of situation would only happen in ancient television dramas. It was one thing for it to appear in a rural place like the Purple Cloud Planet, but why did it happen in an extremely tight security space station like the Vika Goddess star system? Did this thief really think he could escape all the monitoring and automatic guard robots in the space station? However, no matter what happened later, from the looks of it, this black shadow darted around in the crowd. Even if the automatic guard robot had already reacted and started to pursue, it could not catch up at all. If this situation continued, he might really escape for now. Seeing that the black shadow was gradually approaching him under the encirclement of the automatic guards, Chu Nan glanced and quietly took 2 steps back. He turned his body slightly and listened to the sounds in the distance, lowering his head to pretend to focus on looking at the virtual screen of his personal terminal. As he heard the voice getting closer, Chu Nan quickly calculated these data in his mind. At the last moment, he slowly took a step forward. That black shadow had already arrived. Chu Nan stepped out and it happened to be the place where his right foot landed. His foot stepped on Chu Nan's foot accurately and his body immediately lost balance. However, this person's reaction was also extremely fast. As soon as his body tilted, he took the opportunity to slap Chu Nan, planning to borrow Chu Nan's body to stabilize himself. However, Chu Nan happened to lean back and avoided his palm. That person exclaimed softly and twisted his waist. Internal breath surged out from the spot where he stepped on Chu Nan, wanting to use the recoil to bounce up again. Chu Nan was slightly angry. Although the internal breath that surged out from under this person's feet was not especially powerful, if he was not prepared, his entire foot would be shattered by this kick. This person seemed to be casual, but his attacks were actually so ruthless. After all, Chu Nan was not an internal breath martial artist and could not mobilize his internal breath to circulate anywhere in his body at any time. At this moment, he did not have the time to mobilize his internal breath to defend. However, his reaction was faster. The moment he felt internal breath coming from the other party's feet, his ankle shook and he gently raised his foot diagonally. That person's body immediately tilted again and could not be stepped on. Chu Nan's body instantly leaned forward and he spat out his left fist from his waist. He bluntly used the sitting horse stab fist and struck the right ribs of that person. Bang! With a low muffled sound, that person was sent flying by Chu Nan's punch that contained second revolution internal breath. He twisted his body in the air. When he landed, he discovered that he was already surrounded by the automatic guard robots with no gap to escape. That person cursed in a low voice and turned to look at the direction where Chu Nan was just now. However, he discovered that the place had already become empty, and there was no figure left. Chapter 128. Dunleavy was not in a good mood. Even though he had left Earth for more than 10 hours and was now in the space station of the Vika Goddess star system, 246 light-years away from Earth, the abnormally depressed and strange atmosphere at his aunt's house still seemed to surround him. This made him feel uncomfortable all over. Thinking of Elvie's relaxed smile before he left, Dunleavy felt his heart ache. He did not believe that Elvie would live happily in that environment. He could tell that the smile she revealed in front of him was actually a little forced. There were always deeper emotions hidden in the corners of her eyes. This was not what a girl who had just passed her 14th birthday 2 days ago should show. Every time he saw Elvie smile at him, Dunleavy's heart ached. If possible, he wanted to take Elvie with him when he left Earth yesterday and stop her from staying at his aunt's house to endure the abnormally unhappy atmosphere. However, he could not. It was his father's decision to let Elvie stay at his aunt's house before entering Star Cloud Academy. The goal was very simple. He hoped to use her to ease the relationship between the two families. Her father would definitely not allow her to return after only 2 months, because this meant that all his previous efforts had been in vain. Most importantly, Elvie herself would not agree. Since she had accepted her father's arrangements and lived in her aunt's house, it meant that she was willing to do this. She was a very strong girl. If she was forced to leave after only staying at her aunt's house for 2 months, in her opinion, it was equivalent to admitting defeat and being a failure. She would definitely not allow herself to be like this. On this point, when Dunleavy and Elvie had a long discussion in private the night before, she had made her intentions very clear. Therefore, Dunleavy could do nothing but leave obediently. Such helplessness made Dunleavy feel very vexed. He wished that he could immediately find someone to beat up. At that moment, he heard a scream. "Stop him!" Dunleavy looked up in surprise and saw a figure wrapped in a black robe running around in the huge space of the space station. It knocked over several tourists along the way, causing a commotion. "Heh, you came at the right time." Dunleavy clenched his fists and moved his feet, quickly approaching the black shadow. As long as he approached that black-clothed person, he would definitely use his fist to teach him a lesson and vent the depression caused by Elvie. However, he had only taken 2 steps when he suddenly discovered that another person had walked out of the passageway beside him. Although his footsteps were not fast, he perfectly blocked the direction of the black shadow's charge. In the eyes of ordinary people, after the black-clothed person collided with the person who suddenly appeared, he was sent flying for some reason and fell into the encirclement of the automatic guard robots. There was no way to escape. However, in the eyes of Dunleavy, who had the strength of a third-stage internal breath martial artist, he clearly saw the battle between that person and the black-clothed person. Although it was abnormally short and they had only exchanged a few moves, that person had left an extremely deep impression on Dunleavy. In such a small area just now, that person's attacks were abnormally precise. Every judgment seemed to be very exquisite, and the timing could be said to be perfect. This was why he sent that black-clothed person flying in the blink of an eye. Apart from that, what surprised Dunleavy the most was that the last punch of that person had actually forced the man in black to land in the middle of the encirclement of the automatic robots that were surrounding him from all directions. It was impossible for him to escape from any direction. From this, it could be seen that that punch actually included the offset force of the black-clothed person's punch. It could simply be called terrifying. Although it was only a glimpse, Dunleavy was certain that the person looked to be a very young man, probably not even 20 years old. At such an age, he had such a precise and terrifying martial technique. His combat experience was even more terrifying. It was really unbelievable. There are probably not many such outstanding young martial artists in the entire Federation. Could he be the disciple of a famous expert? However, Dunleavy's gaze was attracted by the man in black who flew out just now. When he turned around, he had already lost sight of that person. Turning around, he saw that after the black-clothed person was surrounded by the automatic guard robot, he was finally forced to surrender under the aim of countless laser guns. Dunleavy shook his head lightly. This black-clothed person had actually performed well in the battle just now. He should be a good martial artist, but for some reason, he had been reduced to a shameful thief and was stupid enough to steal from the space station. It was really admirable. However, this was not Dunleavy's problem. He looked around and did not see the figure of the young martial artist who had attracted his attention. He could only give up. At this moment, his personal terminal rang, indicating that the 0-773Z flight line he had chosen to take to planet Macaw had been confirmed to depart in 45 minutes. He threw what he had seen to the back of his mind and walked towards the designated C-28 waiting hall. "Hello, Mr. O'Brien. Welcome to this flight. The Rainer Chamber of Commerce is sincerely at your service. I wish you a happy and comfortable journey." As the eldest son of the O'Brien family, although Dunleavy was not like the descendants of the other large families in the Federation, who had been extremely arrogant and extravagant from a young age, and would only choose the most comfortable top-notch private spacecraft that was specially used to serve the upper-class people, he was not like ordinary civilians who would take the crowded economy capsule. Instead, he chose the top luxurious cabin of the Space Shuttle line. The passengers in the luxurious cabin did not need to squeeze in an ordinary waiting hall with the other ordinary passengers. Instead, they had their own special VIP room. After Dunleavy came to the VIP room and showed his personal identification, he was immediately received by the waitress with the warmest smile. She respectfully welcomed him in. There were not many people in the VIP room. After all, not only did the top-notch luxurious cabin cost an extremely high travel fee, but it also required a certain level of status to be recognized as a VIP by the Rainer Chamber of Commerce that operated this space shuttle line. After Dunleavy walked in, perhaps because he was too young, he attracted the gazes of the others in the room. However, they only glanced at it and did not mind. They lowered their heads and busied themselves. Dunleavy also did not mind. He casually found a seat that was not too far away from the surrounding people and sat down. Just as he was about to open his personal terminal to contact his family, he suddenly saw a familiar figure walk into the VIP room. Dunleavy looked at it and was surprised. This person was actually the young martial artist who had attracted his attention just now. Dunleavy was even more surprised now. This young martial artist's appearance was actually a little familiar. Could it be that he had seen the person before? He stared at that person for a moment before his heart suddenly stirred. He stood up and went forward. "Excuse me, are you Chu Nan?" Chapter 129. While the X-881C civilian spaceships jumped out of the Stargate, 4,900 light-years away, another small fleet composed of 2 large civilian spaceships and 5 Chamber of Commerce-level medium-scale military escort battleships also jumped out of a Stargate at the border of the United States of Meleta and the Declan Empire. After half a year, the inspection work of the NOTTEM Chamber of Commerce's Special Orion Arm Inspection Team had ended successfully. The leader of the inspection team, Rubes, was currently leading the inspection fleet and planning to use the route in the Declan Empire to return to the NOTTEM Chamber of Commerce located on the Sagittarius Arm to submit the work report. The most important job had to be explained in person. This was a tradition that the NOTTEM Chamber of Commerce had persisted for tens of thousands of years. Even though the existence of the Milky Way network had long made communication tens of thousands of light-years away abnormally convenient, this tradition had never changed. Therefore, although Rubes had long reported most of the work results, he still needed to personally return to complete the inspection. On the bridge of a large contract-level civilian spaceship in the middle of the fleet, the huge virtual screen in front of Elkhart finally stopped the data rolling like a waterfall. Elkhart stared at the virtual screen for about 10 minutes before blinking. He raised his hands, and his 10 fingers turned into after images. A large pile of data instantly appeared on the virtual screen. After busying himself for about half an hour, Elkhart finished the last operation. A progress bar suddenly appeared on the virtual screen. Then, he let out a long breath and his straightened body instantly softened. Just now, he had performed a 2-hour high-speed data processing work again and finally finished dealing with the various data problems he had encountered in this inspection. This also meant that all his work in the inspection team had ended. He could finally relax for a while. After closing his eyes and stopping for a moment, Elkhart got up and planned to personally pour himself a cup of his favorite tea. When he turned around, he discovered that Rubes was still staring at the virtual screen in front of him. He frowned and was motionless, not knowing what he was thinking. Elkhart was a little surprised. Before he did this data processing work, Rubes was already staring at the virtual screen in a daze. Now that his 2-hour work was over, he was actually still in this state. Could it be that he had encountered a problem that even he could not resolve? Elkhart walked over curiously and raised his head to pat Rubes on the shoulder. Hey, Rubes, what are you thinking? Ouch. As soon as Elkhart's hand touched Rubes' shoulder, a recoil that was not powerful but carried an extremely cold aura suddenly came from his shoulder, directly repelling his hand. He instantly felt an intense pain coming from his palm and could not help but groan. Rubes seemed to have just reacted. He turned around and discovered that it was Elkhart who had arrived beside him. Elkhart, your work is over. Elkhart raised his right hand that had slapped Rubes' shoulder in confusion and discovered that there were no external injuries, but the pain that seemed to be coming from his bone marrow still did not fade, causing him to frown deeply. My work is already over. What are you doing? Elkhart raised his right hand and told him about the abnormality that had happened after touching Rubes' shoulder. Oh, I am circulating my internal breath to do an experiment. If you pat my shoulder at this moment, you will definitely be shaken by the internal breath. Fortunately, I was only doing an experiment just now and did not use too powerful internal breath. Otherwise, you would not just feel pain in your hand, Rubes explained with a smile. Experiment? An experiment related to internal breath? Elkhart was even more curious. That is right, Rubes was a third-stage void break martial artist and could be considered powerful. However, in the entire Not-Tem Chamber of Commerce, his strength was not considered much. This was because although there were no star-grade martial artists under the guards of the Not-Tem Chamber of Commerce to date, there were already more than 1,000 Heaven Control martial artists and countless void break martial artists. In terms of martial artist strength, Rubes was not ranked in the Chamber of Commerce. He was able to hold a high position in the Chamber of Commerce and was even sent to be the patriarch of this inspection team not because of his martial arts strength, but because of his much more outstanding workability and leadership. Therefore, although Rubes was a powerful void break martial artist, he actually did not have much time to focus on martial arts. As for experimenting with internal breath at such a critical period, it had never happened before. What experiment made him so eager? Do you still remember the name Chu Nan? Rubes did not answer this question immediately but asked. Chu Nan. Elkhart searched through his memories. With his strongest data analyst super brain, he instantly found all the information related to this name in his memories. It is that Earth Federation person with abnormal human test data? Yes, Rubes nodded. You should still remember that 3 months ago, I ordered the Earth Federation branch to increase the level of attention they pay to Chu Nan in order to figure out the reason for these abnormal data on him. From the looks of it, there is a result now. But what does this have to do with your internal breath experiment? The expression on Rubes' face became a little strange. Yesterday, the Earth Federation's branch office sent me another report regarding Chu Nan. They discovered that there are some shocking characteristics about him. One of them is related to the experiment I just did. What experiment is it? Elkhart was puzzled. When internal breath flows in a martial artist's body, it will maintain a certain frequency of vibration. Every martial artist has a fixed frequency and very few fluctuations appear. This is because the appearance of these fluctuations means that this martial artist has lost control of his internal breath. It is very likely that his internal breath will counterattack him, and in serious cases, he might even lose his life. However, I have observed a large or even extremely exaggerated frequency fluctuation on Chu Nan's body. It completely exceeds common sense. Rubes paused, but said something else that was not relevant. Elkhart rolled his eyes. Chu Nan is still alive? Not only is he not dead, he is also living very well. However, I just tried to control my internal breath to fluctuate a little according to this report, trying to change the frequency of the vibration. What do you think the result was? Elkhart looked at Rubes' expression and shook his head. Clearly, you failed. Yes. If it is only a very weak frequency fluctuation, I can still control it. However, after exceeding a certain limit, I will not be able to completely control my internal breath. I can only give up. Rubes paused, looking puzzled. If according to the report, the frequency of the vibration in Chu Nan's internal breath has actually exceeded 3 kHz, then he should have completely lost control. Looking at Rubes' puzzled expression, Elkhart frowned slightly. I do not know martial techniques, so I do not understand what you mean. However, from the perspective of the data analysis, since this Chu Nan has so many incomprehensible characteristics, it proves that he indeed has a very worth to study. That is right, Rubes nodded in agreement. The Earth Federation's branch office has the same opinion. They have submitted a report and hope to apply to carry out special research on Chu Nan. I have already approved this proposal. That is good. Leave this to your subordinates. They will naturally inform you when the results are out. Elkhart shrugged, not minding it. The Not-Tem Chamber of Commerce was one of the 3 great factions of the Milky Way. As one of the upper echelons of the Chamber of Commerce, it was not a problem for Rubes to divert his attention because of his personal interest. However, it was not right to pay too much attention to an Overlord Body Realm young martial artist who was not even 20 years old in a remote small country like the Earth Federation. I understand. Rubes nodded in agreement. Then, he glanced at the report on the virtual screen in front of him and suddenly laughed. However, it is obvious that those guys from the Earth Federation branch misunderstood me. They probably thought that I am paying some special attention to Chu Nan and actually gave him a 1-star VIP card. Elkhart immediately smiled. It is obvious that they are bootlicking you. Perhaps, the branch office will treat Chu Nan as your illegitimate son in the Earth Federation. Rubes smiled and waved his hand. It does not matter. In any case, since the branch office has this authority, it is up to them. Moreover, with the value Chu Nan has displayed, it is understandable to give him a 1-star VIP card. However, I think, Chu Nan definitely does not understand the meaning of a 1-star VIP card. Therefore, when he discovers this, he might be shocked. Chapter 130. It was not to the extent of being shocked, but until Chu Nan reached the door of the VIP room, he was still a little shocked. Are you sure I can really enter this place? He glanced at the luxurious facilities in the VIP room that were clearly far superior to ordinary waiting rooms and could not help but turn to ask the waitress beside him. After stopping the black-clothed person who was suspected to be a thief, it took him some time to find the waiting hall where he was about to take the space shuttle line. However, he did not expect that as soon as he revealed his identity, the expression of the receptionist in charge of verifying his identity would change. She actually invited him to the side to wait. Just as he was feeling a little flustered and felt that something had gone wrong, a beautiful waitress appeared and directly led him to this VIP room. Chu Nan had heard that every space station had such a VIP room that was different from an ordinary waiting room, but this place was clearly prepared for those true and powerful guests. Who was he? In order to save some money, the spacecraft tickets he bought were the cheapest. Yes, sir. The waitress still maintained her perfect smile and nodded at Chu Nan. All right, can I ask why? Chu Nan frowned slightly. Before understanding what was going on, it felt a little unreliable to make him walk into the VIP room rashly. The waitress' beautiful eyes turned and she glanced at Chu Nan from head to toe. She seemed to understand why this young man in front of her, who was dressed extremely ordinary and did not look like a person of authority, would have such a question. Honorable Mr. Chu Nan, since you have the star VIP card of the Noctem Chamber of Commerce, you are the most esteemed guest of our Chamber of Commerce. It is natural for you to enjoy such a service. You do not have to be surprised. Is that so? Chu Nan was immediately surprised. Previously, when he received the 1-star VIP card from Yu Tingfeng, he had only given him all kinds of benefits. He did not expect that he could even enjoy special VIP treatment while sitting in a civilian spacecraft. It was really surprising. On second thought, Chu Nan still felt that something was wrong. But I remember that this flight isn't under the Noctem Chamber of Commerce? Sir, our company is one of the properties under the Noctem Chamber of Commerce. You are a star VIP directly under the Noctem Chamber of Commerce. Then, any property under the Noctem Chamber of Commerce can enjoy the most honorable VIP treatment. Our company is no exception. As the waitress patiently explained to Chu Nan, she curiously but quietly sized him up. On the surface, this esteemed guest was probably not even 20 years old. Moreover, regardless of his clothes or temperament, it revealed that he should be from an ordinary family. Logically speaking, such a person should not have any connection with the Noctem Chamber of Commerce's star VIP card that was extremely difficult to obtain and did not even have a few top-notch political figures in the Earth Federation. However, when she tested his identity, it clearly showed that he indeed had this identity. Although it was only a 1-star VIP card, it was already the top-notch VIP to the Federation's Marine Space Shuttle Company, which was responsible for running this spaceflight. They naturally had to give Chu Nan the top treatment. I see. Hearing the waitress's explanation, Chu Nan reached out to touch his pocket. He carefully put the 1-star VIP card that Yu Tingfeng had given him in his pocket. He did not take it out just now, but the other party still recognized it. It could be seen that this physical card was indeed as Yu Tingfeng had said, and it was completely his personal interest. In fact, it was fine if he did not have it. His 1-star VIP status in the Noctem Chamber of Commerce had long been tied to his personal identification. He did not need to foolishly take out the card every time. All right, thank you for your explanation. Go busy yourself. I can take care of myself. After resolving his doubts, Chu Nan heaved a sigh of relief and smiled at the waitress. All right, if there are any questions, we can serve you at any time. The waitress bowed to Chu Nan and left. Only then did Chu Nan calm down and glance through the door of the VIP room. When he discovered that there were not many people inside, he carefully walked in. After sizing up the environment in the room, Chu Nan saw a spot that was a distance away from the others. Just as he was about to sit down, a person who was originally sitting in the room suddenly stood up and walked towards Chu Nan. When he arrived in front of Chu Nan, that person spoke. "Excuse me, are you Chu Nan?" Chu Nan was immediately stunned. Before he left West Cloud Planet with Dong Feng had once joked to Chu Nan that Chu Nan was now considered a famous person in the Federation. If he went out with him, it would definitely attract others to watch. In order to avoid this situation, the two of them even discussed the countermeasures. Before they set off, Dong Feng even specially prepared a disguise plan to cover Chu Nan's entire face. However, he rejected it because of the heat of the day. However, when the two of them really set off, they discovered that this worry was completely groundless. Although Chu Nan had stolen the limelight in the previous West Cloud Planet's martial arts competition and obtained the attention of many people, those who paid attention to him were only interested in martial arts after all. This was only a small number in the entire Earth Federation's huge population of more than 20 billion and was nothing. Coupled with the fact that Chu Nan had been lying in the hospital for more than 3 months after that, in order to not attract attention, he deliberately did not let young Zaryui report that he had woken up. It was equivalent to disappearing in public for more than 3 months. Such a long time was enough to make most people forget about him. It was only normal that he was not recognized. However, now, someone ran to Chu Nan and said his name. Chu Nan looked at him in surprise. This person also had a very young appearance and did not look much older than Chu Nan. He was probably only in his early 20s. He had a slightly square face, a high nose bridge, and deep eyes. The lines of his face were hard and clear. Coupled with his golden hair, he looked like a typical young European handsome man, leaving a deep impression on people with a glance. However, it was obvious that Chu Nan did not know him. "Who are you?" Chu Nan frowned and asked. Hearing Chu Nan's question, Dunleavy smiled and confirmed that he did not recognize the wrong person. He pointed at the seat beside him and turned around to make an inviting gesture. "Can I chat with you?" To be continued. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss an update. Check out the playlist to catch up on the rest of the series. I'll be back with the next part soon, stay tuned.